Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Palapa Giri Bharatari. Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Balapa Giri Bharatari. Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Balapa Giri Bharatari. Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're reading from Canto 10, chapter 82, and it's the last text in the chapter, text 48. Ahus chate na jinana pa padara vindam. Yogeshvarai hridi vichintyam agada bodhai samsara. Kupa patito tsara navalambam. Geham yusam api manasi udyat sadhana. Ahushate nalina na papadravindam. Yogeshvarai hridi vichintyam agada bodhai samsaram. Kupa patito tarana valambam. Geham yusamapi manasi udyat sadhana. Ahushate na linana papadara vindam. Yogeshvarai hridi vichintyam agata bodhai samsara. Kupa patito taranaya lambam. Geham yusamapi manasi udyat sadhana. Please chant. Yes, the one goes into the other, but the way it's transcribed here is two separated lines, meaning samsaras on the second line and kupas on the third line. So that's why I'm reading it like that. Well, this was from the electronic version of the Srimad Bhagavatam. I just took it. Ahushate nalinana papadara vindam. Yogeshvarai hridi vichintyam agata bodhai. Samsara kupa patito tarana valambam. Geham yusam api manasi udyat sadhana. Ahushate nalinana papadara vindam. Yogeshvarai hridi vichintyam agada bodhai. Samsara kupa patito tarana varalambam. Griham gu samapi manasi udiyat sadana. Thank you so very much. The word for word, Ahu, the gopis said. The gopis said. Cha and te your. Nalina napa, O Lord, whose navel is just like a lotus flower. Pada aravindam, lotus feet. Yoga ishvarai, by the great mystic yogis. Hridi, within the heart. Vichintyam, to be meditated upon. Agada Bodhai, who were highly learned philosophers. Samsara Kupa, the dark wall of material existence. So indeed the samsara and the kupa go together. Patita, of those fallen. Uttarana, of deliverers. Avalambam, the only shelter. Geham, family affairs. Yusam, of those engaged. Api, the manasi, in the minds. Udiyat, let be awakened. Sada, always. Na, our. So the translation for text 48. The gopis spoke thus. Dear Lord, whose navel is just like a lotus flower, your lotus feet are the only shelter for those who have fallen into the deep well of material existence. Your feet are worshipped and meditated upon by great mystic yogis and highly learned philosophers. We wish that these lotus feet may also be awakened within our hearts, although we are only ordinary persons engaged in household affairs. And the BBT purport. The translation and word meanings for this verse are taken from Srila Prabhupada's English rendering of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 181, where this verse is quoted. Revealing the jealous mood in which the gopis spoke these deceptively reverential words, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti gives their statements as follows. Quote, O Supreme Lord, O directly manifest Super Soul, O crest jewel of instructors in definitive knowledge, you were aware of our excessive attachment to home, property, and family. Therefore, you previously had Uddhava instruct us in the knowledge that dispels ignorance, and now you have done so yourself. In this way, you have purified our hearts of contamination, and as a result, we understand your pure love for us, free from any motivation other than assuring our liberation. But we are only unintelligent cowherd women. How can this knowledge remain fixed in our hearts? We cannot even meditate steadily on your feet, the focus of realization for great souls like Lord Brahma. Please be merciful to us and somehow make it possible for us to concentrate on you, even a little. We are still suffering the reactions of our own fruits of work, so how can we meditate on you, the goal of great yogis? Such yogis are immeasurably wise, but we are mere feeble-minded women. Please do something to get us out of this deep well of material life. Close quote. Pure devotees are never motivated by a desire for material elevation or spiritual liberation. And even if the Lord offers them such benedictions, the devotees often refuse to accept them, as stated by Lord Krishna in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 11:20-34. Na kinchit sadavo dira bhaktahi ekantino mama, vanchanti api maya datam, kaivalyam apuar bhavam. Translation: because my devotees possess saintly behavior and deep intelligence, they completely dedicate themselves to me and do not desire anything besides me. Indeed, even if I offer them liberation from birth and death, they do not accept it. Close quote. It is quite appropriate, therefore, that the gopis respond with a trace of jealous anger to Lord Krishna's attempt at teaching them Jnana Yoga. Thus, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the words the gopis speak in this verse may be interpreted as follows. Quote, O sun, who directly destroys the darkness of ignorance, we are scorched by the sun rays of this philosophical knowledge. We are chakora birds who can subsist only on the moonlight radiating from your beautiful face. Please come back to Vrindavan with us, and in this way bring us back to life, close quote. And if he says, quote, then come to Dwarka, there we will enjoy together, close quote, they reply that Sri Vrindavan is their home, and they are too attached to it for them to take up residence anywhere else. Only there, the gopis imply, can Krishna attract them by wearing peacock feathers in his turban and playing enchanting music with his flute. Only by his appearing again in Vrindavan can the gopis be saved, not by any other kind of meditation on him or theoretical knowledge of the self. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, in the 10th canto, 82nd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Krishna and Balaram Meet the Inhabitants of Vrindavan. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shlakhaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhya Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimataram Padaswami Iti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimata Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll just read the translation once again. The gopis spoke thus, Dear Lord, whose navel is just like a lotus flower, your lotus feet are the only shelter for those who have fallen into the deep well of material existence. Your feet are worshipped and meditated upon by great mystic yogis and highly learned philosophers. We wish that these lotus feet may also be awakened within our hearts, although we are only ordinary persons engaged in household affairs. And just going through the BBT purport, the first mention that's made is that this verse, the translation for it, comes from a quotation in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Madhya Lila 181. So in looking at it, this particular verse is followed by another verse, which gives some insight into the gopis' desires in relation to Lord Krishna. So the next verse says this, the gopis thought, Dear Lord, if your lotus feet again come to our home in Vrindavan, our desires will be fulfilled. So that was the next verse, following on the one that we are reading today, at least as it's quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Madhya Lila. So there's an explanation given by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he says this: the gopis are purely engaged in the service of the Lord without motive. They are not captivated by the opulence of Krishna, nor by the understanding that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur makes it quite clear. So taking into account this absorption in service to Lord Krishna, Srila Vishwanath, in commenting on this text, he notes the first two words of this verse are ahuscha, the gopis said. That's what it translates into. It actually indicates that the words seem to be reverential. They appear very reverential. But in fact, they're spoken in a mood of anger. So one may not be able to understand that if one were not looking at the previous Acharya's understanding. And so Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he captures that mood of anger of the gopis in their words. And this is how he communicates the thoughts of the gopis, which are imbued with some sort of anger. So this is what he says are the thoughts of the gopis. O Supreme Lord, O directly manifest super soul, O crest jewel of teachers of philosophical knowledge, understanding that we have great attachment to house, wealth, and family, you previously had Uddhava instruct us, and now personally you are purifying our hearts with knowledge to destroy that ignorance. So if we pause for a minute and we look at this delivery to Lord Krishna, we can note that Lord Krishna had used a very logical argument to bridge the gap of separation, because the gopis have not seen Krishna ever since he went to Mathura to kill King Kamsa. And now it is such a long time later. So how does Krishna actually bridge that gap of separation? So this is the logic that Lord Krishna uses. And this is what he says. So he's seen the gopis after such a long time. So he says to them, do you perhaps think that I am ungrateful and thus hold me in contempt? Because, that would be a natural question to ask. Are you actually feeling contemptuous towards me? Because Krishna has not seen them all this time. And then Krishna says, so listen to his logic. After all, it is the Supreme Lord who brings living beings together and then separates them. So he's giving an explanation in the third person. The Supreme Lord brings persons together and separates them. So this is Krishna's logic, bridging this gap of great separation. And then Krishna uses a simile to expand on the idea. He says, just as the wind brings together masses of clouds, blades of grass, wisps of cotton, and particles of dust, only to scatter them all again, so the Creator deals with the created beings in the same way. So he's given an explanation of how it is that the Supreme Lord brings people together and then separates them. It's like similar to, bringing masses of clouds together and then, clouds scatter, or even bringing dust particles together and then the dust particles scatter. So he's comparing it that way. This is Krishna's logic when he sees the gopis after such a long time. Now, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives insight into the gopis' response to Lord Krishna's logic. And so this is Srila Vishwanath giving insight to how the gopis are processing what they've just heard from Krishna. They say, "O crest jewel of clear speakers," so praising him, "that Supreme Lord you are blaming is none other than yourself." Everyone in the world knows this. Why should we be ignorant of this fact? So notice they pick up the underlying assumption that's there in Krishna's logic. He's putting the blame on the Supreme Lord, or saying the Supreme Lord arranges this, and the gopis gets pointed out immediately. What a great speaker you are, but you that same Supreme Lord. Everyone in the world knows this. Why should we be ignorant of this? So this is how the processing is going on, thanks to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, giving insight into the gopis' thinking. And here's Krishna's processing. But my dear girlfriends, if this is true, I must be God. But still, I am conquered by your loving affection. So notice how extremely brilliant Krishna and the gopis both are. He acknowledges that he's not pointing out something, but at the same time, he's actually noting that why he's not pointing it out that he's God is because he's actually been conquered by them, by their loving affection. So it's a way of pacifying. Very, very brilliant exchange. So it's then that Lord Krishna speaks a generalization. But he also notes the specific devotion of the gopis, and that's what he's putting his attention on. So he puts it this way: rendering devotional service to me, so this is the generalization he makes to the gopis, qualifies any living being for eternal life. But by your good fortune, you have developed a special loving attitude towards me, by which you have attained me. Close quote. So Srila Vishwanath gives the hidden meaning of Lord Krishna's words. And this is the hidden meaning, because Srila Vishwanath is getting into the subtle thought process, the subtle emotions that are happening in the exchange between Krishna and the gopis at this moment of bridging this great gap of separation. So this is how Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains Lord Krishna's words. He says, your affection drags me to you by force. It brings me close to you, and it assures that very soon I will come to remain permanently with you. So that's the very subtle, very intimate thinking that is being communicated by Lord Krishna. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur puts it in words. So what the gopis are referring to in today's statement, that Lord Krishna had sent Uddhava to instruct them, and that in the present moment he was doing the same thing, purifying their hearts with knowledge. We can look at what those words were that Krishna said at the time when he sent to Uddhava. So this is the time when the gopis are experiencing that great separation from Krishna, and one of the persons apart from Akura is Uddhava that Krishna sends to pacify the gopis. And this is what Krishna's message was to them at that time. I'm going to read it. He says, dear ladies, I am the beginning and end of all created beings and exist both within and without them. Just as the elements, ether, water, earth, air, and fire are the beginning and end of all material objects and exist both within and without them. So it sounds like a very cryptic message. But this particular statement is very similar to the one sent by Krishna in his message to the gopis via Uddhava. So the message delivered by Uddhava to the gopis, so that I had just read this text 48. So here's the message delivered by Uddhava. The Supreme Lord said, you are never actually separated from me, for I am the soul of all creation. Just as the elements of nature, earth, ether, air, fire, water, and earth are present within everyone's mind, life, air, and senses, and also within the physical elements and the modes of material nature. So this is what the gopis are recognizing, that Lord Krishna had previously instructed them through Uddhava with knowledge that dispels ignorance. That's what they called it. It dispels ignorance, because if you understand that Krishna is actually present within all the elements of nature, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and so because the body is made up of those elements, that means that Krishna is present already within one's mind, within one's life air, within one's senses. That's what he's actually saying. And the modes of material nature, the way one's impelled to act. He's present. So therefore, you can't say that you're ever separated from Krishna. That's what he's instructing the gopis in the time of their separation. And in today's verse, he's saying a very similar thing. He's saying that he's the beginning and the end of everything that's created and everything that exists. So just as the elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether are the beginning and end of all material objects, because every material object has to have earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So Krishna is existing within those objects. And so those objects always basically have him there. He's the beginning and the end of everything that's created. So this is what the gopis are recognizing, that Krishna had previously told them the same thing through Uddhava. And now he's doing the same thing. So that knowledge that dispels ignorance is knowing. So because they're saying that this knowledge that Krishna has just given them, it takes away any ignorance. So if we look at that knowledge that dispels ignorance, it's actually knowing what one's own position is in relationship to Lord Krishna. By constitution, the way we made up. So this is that knowledge. So the individual soul, it is always part and parcel of the Supreme. And his or her position is to render transcendental service to the Lord. So this is what makes up transcendental contact with the Supreme Lord. If you have this understanding that one's always a part and parcel of the Supreme, and by position, by one's constitution, one has to render transcendental service to him. And doing so makes up a kind of transcendental contact that's permanently there with the Supreme Lord. And the term that's found in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 6, text 28, there's a word called Brahma Samsparsham. And that's that term, this transcendental contact with the Lord. So Lord Krishna, he emphasizes the oneness between himself and his creation. That's what he's saying. There's a oneness between himself and his creation. This is part of his message to the gopis, that he's the soul of all creation. So although he's the supreme entity, it's not that his creation and he are composed of two parts, so to speak, be they alike or unlike, but rather on the absolute plane, the creation is an expansion of his being. So that's the part that he was trying to communicate to the gopis before and in the present. Just prior to the verse we're reading, he was saying the same thing to them. So interestingly, Srila Vishwanath, he states that through the message delivered by Uddhava, Lord Krishna was in fact secretly telling the gopis that by way of his reciprocating their special love for him, that he was present with them, not only as the soul of all creation, but also as their special lover. So again, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he can perceive the subtle emotional component, that loving connection that's there between Krishna and the devotees. So he's saying it wasn't just that external philosophical knowledge that was being communicated to the gopis. But Krishna was actually, even through making such a statement, he was communicating his special love for them, meaning that he was present with them as their special lover. So that was Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur expanding. So in one sense, Lord Krishna being absent from the gopis, one could say he could never be completely absent, since in his spiritual form, he's always within the hearts and minds of the gopis. So that's the important part to understand. And that's what he's reminding them, that he's always within their hearts and always within their minds. So this analysis, it connects the idea of being in constant transcendental touch with the Supreme Lord. So Lord Krishna explains this, and in Bhagavad Gita 6:27, this is how Krishna explains it. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme Lord, and thus he's freed from all reactions to past deeds. So that's how Lord Krishna explains this transcendental contact with himself that is happening when one's functioning, having one's mind fixed on him, and it automatically, just by virtue of having one's mind fixed on him, brings this great transcendental happiness. And he points out that actually that mode of passion now is gone. And one realizes that qualitative identity with the Lord, meaning one understands that as a spirit soul, one is qualitatively the same or has a oneness with the Supreme Lord. And just because one has that understanding, it means that one is freed from all reactions to past deeds. So the gopis say this: you have purified our heart of contamination. That was what they said. And as a result, we understand your pure love for us, free from any motivation other than assuring us liberation. So this particular message delivered by Uddhava, the same message delivered by Krishna just prior to this verse that we're reading today, the gopis actually say they're understanding that pure love that Krishna has for them. So Srila Prabhupada explains something very interesting. He says that one cannot remain in the quality of Brahman. So that's like, being liberated. The absolute, until one's mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. So you can't be in that completely transcendental position unless your mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. And that the term that's there is Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayor. So the gopis, they raise an interesting question, expressing that their minds are not fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. This is what they're saying. So we've just heard that it's not possible to actually be in that kind of liberated stage unless you have your mind fixed on Lord Krishna. And the gopis, they raise a question where they're saying that their mind isn't fixed on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. And this is what they say. This is all thanks to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who's picking up the subtleties. They say, we are unintelligent cowherd women. How can this knowledge remain fixed in our heart? We cannot even meditate steadily on your feet, the focus of realization for great souls like Brahma. This is what they say of themselves. They're saying, but they don't have their minds fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. They're just simple cowherd women. So how can this knowledge remain with them, that Krishna's present in all material elements, therefore he's present in their mind, he's present in their life is. Now how can this knowledge remain with them? Because they don't have their mind fixed on him. So therefore they pray. So this is what they're communicating to Lord Krishna. Please be merciful to us and somehow make it possible for us to concentrate on you for even a little bit. We are still suffering the reactions of our own fruitive work. So that's how they're communicating, how they see themselves. They do think that they're suffering the reactions of their own fruitive work. And they're asking, please be kind to us that we really can meditate on your lotus feet, even for a little bit. So the motivation is not a desire for material elevation. That's the interesting part. Or spiritual liberation. They don't have that desire. That's not what they're praying for. They're just praying that please let us be able to meditate even a little bit on your lotus feet. I mean, I read what Krishna says about somebody who is able to meditate on his lotus feet. It's actually a position of great transcendental happiness. It means that the mode of passion is gone. It means that all the reactions to one's past deeds have been wiped away. But just by how the gopis are praying, it implies they don't have a desire for material elevation. They don't have a desire for spiritual liberation. And Lord Krishna responds in this way to when the gopis say their prayer, please be merciful to us and somehow make it possible for us to concentrate on you for even a little bit. We are still suffering the reactions of our own fruitive work. This is how Krishna responds. Because my devotees possess saintly qualities or saintly behavior and deep intelligence, they completely dedicate themselves to me and do not desire anything besides me. Indeed, even if I offer liberation from birth and death, they do not engage in it. So Lord Krishna understands how the process of devotion to him works. And he explains that this is from Srimad Bhagavatam 11:30. It was read in text 34. It was read in the purport today. So Lord Krishna gives further insight into the gopis. And that is that they have saintly behavior, they've got deep intelligence, and they're completely dedicated to him. That's what he's saying. He knows how his devotees are. And he knows that even if he offers them liberation from birth and death, they don't engage in it. So Krishna already knows this. So even the gopis are saying, how please, be kind to us. Let us meditate a little bit allow us to meditate, make it possible for us to meditate even a little bit on your lotus feet. Krishna actually spells it out. Actually, this is saintly behavior. It's deep intelligence. They are dedicated to him, and they don't desire anything besides him. So Lord Krishna's devotees, they never accept liberation, which is the result of Gyan, and even if it's offered by the Supreme Lord himself. So those that are cultivating knowledge of transcendence, perhaps there's some desire for liberation, but on the part of devotees, those who are trying to meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord, there's no such desire. So the question can be raised, how then could the gopis, the crest jewel of all devotees, accept this knowledge? How could they accept this knowledge that Krishna is giving them? Just prior to this, he's telling them that, he's present in all the material elements. He's present in the life airs. He's present in their mind, just by virtue of the body being made up of those material elements. And Srila Vishwanath states that it is appropriate that they express anger in this verse of today. So here's that verse. I'm going to read it again. There's anger. They're expressing anger. It sounds reverential, but it's angry. Dear Lord, whose navel is just like a lotus flower, your lotus feet are the only shelter for those who've fallen into the deep well of material existence. Your feet are worshipped and meditated upon by great mystic yogis and highly learned philosophers. We wish that these lotus feet may also be awakened within our hearts, although we are only ordinary persons engaged in household affairs. So, um, so the gopis are actually expressing anger in this verse, or these words that they're saying, upon hearing the unbearable, to them it's unbearable, the teachings of spiritual knowledge from the mouth of Lord Krishna. And they had the same response when Uddhava was delivering the same message of Lord Krishna, because their relationship is so deep and it's so intimate that they're actually just wishing to keep their minds at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. They're not looking to be freed from, reactions to past fruitive deeds. So these are some thoughts, or as I was able to understand from the acharyas, this particular verse. If there's some questions or further understanding, please feel free.
It's, it's quite a profound um, description and narration of the relationship of Krishna with the gopis, and the the fact that they exemplify the highest worship that is there as per Lord Chaitanya. What, like we heard before, that's what we're receiving. So it's the highest example. And then it fits very well with the philosophy, because what we learn in Bhagavad Gita and in Srimad Bhagavatam is that by the process of devotional service, at one point you come to the Brahma Bhuta stage, or the stage of you become free. You become fully realized of your spiritual constitution. So that's a particular stage. And in that stage, what it means is that now you become free from desires and attachments, hankerings and lamentation is how it's put in the verse in the Bhagavad Gita. And in the Bhagavatam, it's put that you become free from the modes of the influence of passion and ignorance, and you're situated in pure goodness. And that position is a position of knowledge. You come to understand. So you realize the absolute truth. But that's just the beginning. Now you can enter into is a beginning of a much deeper understanding, which is a personal understanding of the absolute truth. So the Bhagavad Gita tells us that at that moment we can start devotional service. That's the real beginning of devotional service. So for the Gyanis, or for the Brahma, those who are absorbed in Brahman, they in that level, in the Brahma Bhuta level. But that level, you cannot remain if you don't go to the next stage, which is embracing and accepting and worshiping the lotus feet of the Lord. So if you don't go to that, then you fall down. Even after achieving that position of liberation, you will fall down. That's what the Bhagavatam said. Without taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Now the gopis are the highest example of being situated in that personal relationship, loving relationship. And so they beyond, it's you can go higher than that. It's the topmost form of that personal loving relationship. And you can imagine then being told something. It's like, you take a PhD and try to, teach them a class that is for elementary school. You know, it just doesn't make sense. What are you doing? It's disrespectful. It's not acknowledging. I mean, that's not what we're wasting our time. So they really, their thing is they just want to be with Krishna and they're separated with Krishna. And now you come and explain in a philosophical way how you don't have to, you don't need to be with Krishna because Krishna is with you and because he's all pervading. It's like now you're being clever, you know, the best of speakers. Yeah, right. It's all, it's, it's revealing that. And you can imagine sometimes someone is, you're talking in an intimate way with someone that is intimately connected and you're revealing your heart and the person will start to give, some clever philosophical understanding. Is like, no, it's not, you're missing the point. So, so yeah, there should be angry because really what they want is like come back to us in Vrindavan, not as a king, not as, just like it was before. What is all this philosophy? Uh, and it's beautiful. The speaking is, uh, you know, really we won't be able to understand without the acharyas these moods that are there because it appears just like, all in the philosophical plane, an exchange of I'm the Supreme Lord. Yes, you're the Supreme Lord, but we are just regular people. It's all in that level, but it's not. It's not in that level. I mean, Lord Chaitanya was the greatest of the philosophers. As a personality of Godhead, and he displayed his opulence of knowledge throughout his pastimes, but in his personal with his associate in his, he displayed madness. Philosophy was not, you know he just was running looking for Krishna like a mad person. So it's a complete different level, so you can really appreciate this.
Well, thank you. That was beautifully summarized in your words. Thank you. Um, there's one thought that's struck me because you were in summarizing, you were pointing to that you could say a kind of discrepancy um, between Krishna, articulating some philosophical knowledge, and that it's actually sort of not on the right level, so to speak, of the intimacy that he has with the gopis. But the thing that struck me was in reading Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and how the gopis are responding. It's very interesting because there's always this kind of steadiness of mind because they respond, on the correct level externally. So, um, it's pointed out that there's anger, but actually it's on the correct philosophical level. So, indeed, we are actually simple cowherd women, and we actually understand that it's your pure love that's allowing us to be freed from our great attachment to family and home. So they yes, just they have that steadiness of mind, which I always find very beautiful in reading it. So thank you.
I just thank you for your class, Mataji. I decided I'd stay and I'm late for breakfast transfer, but they may kick me out. That's okay.
Oh.
I'll be this purport might save me. Oh, this verse. So in the Bhagavatam, right? I was wondering what your thoughts would be. Okay, you have the Sri Sri Sat Goswami Astakam prayers, and at the end they talk about how the six Goswamis at the end they're like asking, "Where are you, Krishna? Where are you?" You know, like in the mood of separation, right? They're looking for him, but they're the highest teachers in our sampradaya. We like following in the footsteps of the six Goswamis, and then there's this purport in the this verse in the Bhagavatam, the 118, where it says in the purport it says the secret of success in spiritual life is in satisfying the spiritual master and thereby getting his sincere blessings. So success coming from the lotus feet of the lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way to obtain pure devotional service. Okay, that statement is there. And then you have the six Goswamis who are in the mood of separation. And then we have Prabhupada right here in the seven purposes of ISKCON, right? Like revolution into the impious lives of this civilization's misdirected people. Like, what takes precedence as a priority? Like our personal guru, he's going to be wanting to satisfy Prabhupada. So, what takes precedence? Like most important, is it what the six Goswamis are going through, or um, let's say the seven purposes of ISKCON, and just distribute my books, get out there and let the people know what's going on. Everything else, take a back seat to that, but satisfy Prabhupada's mission to revolutionary mission.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it would seem from what you're expressing that you're pointing out that there's two different emphases that have been placed. So there need not be a discrepancy, because in the one case there's an illustration of the very advanced transcendentalists and their great love for Lord Krishna that's expressed in this kind of mood of being separated from him. And you see it, I mean, you quoted the six Goswamis, and this particular section is dealing with the gopis having that mood of great separation. It's great love for Lord Krishna. So there's no discrepancy between such an example and then the Acharya actually following in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya, so somebody like Srila Prabhupada, and wanting to bring this process to everyone. Because it's a process. So the starting point is still one of, you know what the goal is. So you have the examples of the goal, this great love for Lord Krishna expressed in this mood of separation, but you have to have some knowledge of who Krishna is. And, just like he put an emphasis on that, and it's a kind of teaching that, he's the source of all creation and he's within all creation. So, it's knowledge that's necessary as part of the process of taking to cultivating that relationship with him. So it may seem like very philosophical knowledge, but it's essential for training the mind to actually have the proper understanding so you can cultivate the correct mood. And then, of course, the books, etc., they at least one over time will come to understand that part of the process is, following the rules, certain rules and regulations, which may seem contrary to being sounding so free in the expression of separation from Lord Krishna, but it's part of that process to coming to the point of being freed from the reactions of all one's past deeds, or actually being able to meditate on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna in that kind of way. And Subal was putting that emphasis on that there's so much prior to coming to that point of liberation, and only then does then the process of actual personal relationship with Lord Krishna begin, when the liberation has come. But it doesn't take away from the fact of the necessity to bring the knowledge and the process to everyone. So, yeah, so no real discrepancy. Off you go. Thank you very much for staying the few minutes, and we're happy that you continue with your service. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.